everybody. My name is Angie Viscianen, and I am the founder of Leg Up Legal. We provide a mentoring program that connects prospective law students to lawyers for mentoring, and we started doing these Zoom meetups at the beginning of COVID-19 to allow pre-law students, current law students, and lawyers all to meet and interact together. And the goal of these meetups is really just to give you guys an opportunity to meet other people and, connect with the panelists after the meeting and everything. So please feel free to engage in the meeting. And today we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Wendy Merrill. She is the founder of StrategyHorse Consulting, and she's going to talk to us today about how to advocate for yourself. And I know that this was a topic that was really hard for me early on in my career as a young lawyer. I think, it's always easier for us to help advocate for our clients and help advocate for our friends, but sometimes it's very hard to advocate for ourselves. So I'm really excited to have Wendy present on this topic. So Wendy, I'll let you take it away.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see everyone, and including a lot of familiar names. Greetings I'm actually here in Delaware. I'm from Baltimore, but today I'm visiting in Lower Slower, Delaware, as they call it, the beach near my parents. So please forgive the makeshift background. It's not my fancy office, a little air conditioner over here, quite professional. So I got you beat, Lisa, I think, but no cats here. We are going to talk about self-advocacy today. And it's interesting, as you touched upon, Angie, you're all in the advocacy business, or you want to be in the advocacy business. And lawyers are trained to be excellent advocates for other people, but not so much for ourselves. There's a lot of reasons for that. I've heard over the years that it feels uncomfortable to talk about yourself, to ask for help, to quantify your value, etc. If you're anything like me, I was raised to really not focus on the value that I brought to the table. It was more about fitting myself into other people's boxes that they defined for me. And I think a lot of us kind of feel that way. Some of us who end up going to law school, maybe you're there because there was nothing else to do. Maybe you're there because you just figured it sounded cool to go to law school. You want to become a lawyer. Maybe your parents wanted you to go there. A lot of different reasons. But if you're not in tune to really what you care about and the impact you want to have, and the career that you want to have, that hopefully you're going to be able to achieve what you want to do, hopefully through law school with your law degree, then you're going to be frustrated. You're not going to have a gratifying career. So I want to share a couple of tips and ideas today that might help some of you to figure out how to better advocate for yourself and really push yourself through the discomfort and overcome the obstacles to being an effective advocate for yourself in your career and also in your personal life. So I want to start with what I call the holy trinity of self-advocacy. There are 3 questions that are very simple questions, but they're actually pretty difficult to answer. And for those of you who've heard me speak before, these might sound a little familiar. The first one is, what do you care about? This is really just thinking about your professional, personal, anything that's very important to you in your life. What do you care about? The second question is, what do you fear? Because let's be honest, fear drives everything we do in life, good and bad. And if we're not very honest about what scares us, even the tiniest, silliest things, we can't recognize what's real and what's holding us back and what's something that we can easily work through. The third question is, what do you want? This is a biggie. And this is in your life. This is in your profession. This is personally. This is anything. What do you want? What kind of impact do you want to have? I encourage all of you to work through these questions and not only do it on your own, but do it with those close to you, whether you're in a relationship or your family, close friends, and also for any of you who might be working with a team currently, share it with your colleagues, share it with your friends from law school, because people who are closest to you, who are stakeholders in your success, should be totally in tune with the answers to each one of these questions so they can advocate for you and help you to better advocate for yourself. The next thing I want to talk about is impact, which is my favorite word. I'm a big fan of, not a fan of the word influence or influencer. I like the word impact because it really describes, I feel like, the career goals of the young Gen X generation and also millennials, which is we really care about, yeah, we want to have a nice lifestyle. We certainly want to afford nice things, but the most important thing driving most of us is the impact we want to have, being part of something bigger than ourselves, making a difference in the world, especially now with so many things going on. If you haven't clearly defined the impact you want to have both personally and professionally, how are you ever going to map out your way to get there? And by impact, I mean, it's not just, I want to be a lawyer. It's, why do I want to be a lawyer? Or why am I a lawyer? Why should my clients care about what I'm doing? Why should a firm hire me? What is it that I stand for? And what is it that I bring to the table? And it's hard to do, especially when you're young and starting out, because people don't really lay that out for you. So you have to dig deep and you have to really think about what is most important to you and let that define the impact you want to have in your career, and don't be afraid to do that. Question here, what advice would I give to new attorneys and for those more established in your career? And the careers, I'm trying to read the rest of the question here. Impact changes as we move along. It absolutely does, which is why these questions I talked about, the Holy Trinity, and also thinking about your impact, it's not a static thing. It's something you should be revisiting at a minimum on a yearly basis, if not more frequently. Especially because as we mature in our careers and our lives, our perspective changes, and this is a good thing. So we always want to be mindful of what's important to us. So for example, if you go to law school because you think that you want to be an intellectual property attorney, and you get out of law school and you go get your first job, and you hate it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I just spent all this time and all this money and all this effort. This is what I thought I was going to do, and now I hate it. What's wrong with me? You start questioning yourself, right? But instead of doing that, you should pay attention to what it is that you don't maybe like about your current situation. Is it the work? Is it the clients? Is it the firm? Is it your boss? And is it also kind of where you are in your life? Because with all these different, I mean, this is a great time to talk about this, with all of these different crazy world events going on, I think people are thinking in a different way. And I think we're allowing ourselves to be more human, which is especially important for lawyers, which traditionally you guys were you had to be like this, really tough, be the smartest guy or gal in the room and not show your humanity. Things are changing very quickly. And I personally think that this is a good thing and a silver lining for those that want to practice law, because I believe the future of law is about relatability. It's about being a partner to your clients, about being a partner, sitting on the same side of the table as people that are relying on you. Not being in an ivory tower anymore, throwing out big words that nobody understands, selling through intimidation, charging ridiculous fees and not knowing why. It's really about helping people to reach their goals and helping them to be more impactful. And if they're more impactful, you're impactful. So I think that it's really important to embrace your discomfort, I would say. And if you're kind of going down a path that you're not sure fits, I think we tend to beat ourselves up because we think, my gosh, this is what I wanted. I put so much time into it. It's okay to change. In fact, I think it's really healthy to change. So pay attention to kind of where your life is and what's important to you as you progress in your career. See another question. What are your thoughts about making an impact statement in an elevator pitch of sorts? I love this. In fact, the questions that I mentioned earlier are a great way to develop this impact statement or a personal mission, which I'm a huge fan of. So I often ask people if they have a personal mission statement, and most people kind of look at me like I'm crazy. It sounds really kind of warm and fuzzy. It sounds like kind of flaky, and it sounds hard to do. But it is so important because that's going to define everything you do in your career. It really kind of turns into what your personal brand is. So for those of you who know me, I'm not a fan of traditional elevator pitches that use the word a lawyer or attorney. I like to talk about what you actually do, how you do it, and why you do it every day. So talk about how you help people, how you advocate people, how you work through things with people, how you partner with clients. Turn that into your impact statement. Turn it into your mission statement. I actually personally did that for myself last year. And it feels so good when you tell people your why. why you do, what you care about, what your values are.
Yeah, Wendy, actually, that's a great point. I think so super early on in my career, you know, when I was a first year, second year, I really struggled with that. Like, what do I want my impact to be? Because I felt constantly like I was just chasing other people's approval for most of those years.
Of course.
I just wanted to, learn as much as I could about the law. I just wanted to be able to impress my bosses and impress my clients and do all of that. And I felt like I wasn't really sure how I was impacting the overall vision for anybody. And that for me was very discouraging in a lot of times. And I think, a lot of young lawyers do struggle with that. Early on in your career, what are some goals that, you can have as to like, have you seen some impact statements from young lawyers or even law students who, have kind of thought through this for themselves, and what are the most impactful statements that you've seen?
I'm going to answer that question in sort of a sideways way. Unfortunately, I haven't seen a lot of people do this, which is probably one of the reasons I do what I do and I love what I do and why I'm here today, because I think it is so important. I have a client who is a young lawyer. She's a family lawyer. And unfortunately, her first job was at a firm working for people who were really awful to her. They were very controlling. They didn't build her up. They didn't see her value. It was not pretty. And when she started working with me to help her with business development and to help her to get on the partnership track, the first conversation we had was what we were talking about, this trinity, these questions, right? And I sort of had her, I don't want to say forced, but I kind of massaged her into a position where she was finally being honest with herself about why she chose to practice family law. And because I asked her, I said, well, why did you go to law school? I said, why did you pick family law? And she lit up. And she said, well, I help people. And anytime I help a family and get through a crisis, she was just so animated and so real. And I said, this is you. This is your brand. Stop trying to be this perfect person in a suit and be yourself. And it was this huge change where we wrote down what her brand was about helping people and figuring out the best clients for her that would actually appreciate what she did and also refer her to other people and really become stakeholders. And as soon as she made that pivot, her practice took off. And a few years later, she started her own firm. And now she's absolutely killing it because she's being herself. But that takes maturity. It takes experience. It takes courage. And when she did that, she was in her early 30s. So she had early to mid 30s. So she had a few years of experience under her belt. But it wasn't easy for her to do. So I think that the hardest part is, again, when you're getting out of law school and you're going for your first or second job and you're interviewing and you so want the position, and we tend to kind of want the resume to sell us, right? We want to talk about all of our experience. Well, the truth is we don't have a lot of experience when we're young. So how do you overcome that, right? You focus instead on what you've done, because you haven't done that much, on what you can do, what you will do, what you want to do. What are your passions? What are your interests? What is your work ethic like? What are your skills? What are your talents? All of these things are very, very important to a potential employer, but we tend to downplay it because we're so nervous about what our resume looks like, what our GPA was, and what our experience has been.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So just to recap the questions that you had. So it's, what do you care about? And what do you fear, right? And what do you want your impact to be?
Right. Well, the third is, what do you want? And all of these things will lead to developing your personal brand, your mission, and figuring out what impact you want to have. So I see that somebody asked if I could give examples to how you answer the Trinity questions. And I'm so glad that you asked that. So I'll sort of quickly go through that. So if you're talking about what you care about, let's say you care about the environment, you care about health, you care about having family, being close to family, you care about being relevant, which I hear a lot, and you care about being impactful, right? Okay, that's an example. And then you talk about your fears. Fear of failure is the number one fear, by the way, among young professionals, especially lawyers. So that's a big one, because you have to define, like, what is failure? And if you don't embrace failure, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to learn, right? So it's really important to be okay with making mistakes, and then also hopefully working with people who encourage you to make mistakes and encourage you and help you to learn from them. Other fears, I'm afraid of spiders. I'm afraid of snakes. I actually have heard of those. People list that on for their answers sometimes, and afraid of death. So these are examples of fears that people have. Well, some of these fears you could do something about. Fear of failure, for example, you can dig into that. You can work through that. Fear of death, you can hopefully work through that as well. Fear of spiders, well, if you're scared of spiders, what can you do? You stay inside all the time, and hopefully they don't come to you. You don't go camping. There's some things that you learn to manage the fear. You embrace it and you learn to manage it. And that's really important. In terms of what you want, defining goals. So I want to get this kind of position. I want to help this kind of client with these kinds of problems. I want to make this much money. I want to land this kind of job. I want to live in this place. I want to help people. I want to create world peace. Whatever it is that you want, give yourself permission to do something that usually feels self-indulgent, right? It's not. You have to be really honest with yourself about what you want. And what I have found that's common among a lot of lawyers is that there's not a lot of goals defined. When I ask, what are your goals? It's kind of like, well, I'm just, doing my hours that are required of me. And maybe I do some business development, but no one's really setting aside, creating goals for themselves in terms of what they want to accomplish professionally and personally, and also what the firm may have expect of them, to make sure that they're aligned. Hopefully that clears it up just a little bit.
Yeah. So how do you use the Holy Trinity to advocate for yourself in the workplace? How do you communicate these things to your boss, or how do you live out this Holy Trinity?
So hopefully all of you will have really great bosses right now. We know that's not always going to happen, but hopefully you will, right? If you don't, and your boss does not anticipate your needs, which most of them won't, by the way, if you haven't found that out yet, which is why you have to stick up for yourself, a good manager understands that it is their responsibility to understand what your definition of success is and help you to get it. If they don't ask you that, if they don't dig in and they just kind of throw you, oh, welcome to the firm, here's your seat, here's your desk, here's a ton of work, good luck to you, which unfortunately happens, then it falls upon you to reach out to your manager, to your boss, to the managing partner, whoever, sit down with them and say, I could use some help. I could use some assistance and guidance. I admire you because you have all this experience. I'm in the situation. I'd like to share with you what my goals are. See what you think of them. I'm thinking that this is what success looks like to me. And I'd like for you, to your manager, whoever, to help guide me, to mentor me, to advise me on the best way to achieve these goals. Because I guarantee most of you will not have anybody asking you that, which is why you need to talk about it that way. Don't be afraid to do that, because if they're a decent professional, they're actually going to be really appreciative of the fact that you were very clear and explicit. Because it saves them time and energy, and it didn't occur to them to ask you that. So if you lay it out for them and you say, this is how I need to be managed, this is what I want, and invite their input, it also strokes their ego in a way that's good, right? Because you're involving them and you're saying, more than me. And of course they'll say, okay, well, you want to make $1 gazillion your first year. Well, you may want to slow down on that because it takes time and this goal is reasonable. And that way it becomes a dialogue and you'll build a really good relationship. On the flip side, If your boss is not that kind of person and is not receptive at all, you need to rethink where you are. I wanted to touch upon, oh, I see another question here. Heard that many people have changed their motivations from intrinsic personal interest to externally motivated things such as prestige and money. Have you found people that are better at advocating or happier when they are less focused on monetary outcomes? Yes, yes. And I guess maybe because of my style and my value system, most of the people that I've worked with are much more focused on feeling satisfied in their career, and yeah, they want to make nice money, but they're never driven by money. So I think more the sort of old school of thinking is, that lawyers they're just after the big salaries. Well, yeah, I mean, you guys should be paid for your time and you should be paid well, but most of the people that I've been privileged to work with, actually that's lower on the list, I would say. But if if prestige is important to you, that's fine. If money is important to you, that's fine. It's really a very personal thing. Don't let anybody sort of shame you into not wanting to accomplish things or make money or have prestige, because everybody's different and everybody should have different objectives. I wanted to also quickly, I'm not sure how we're doing on time here, I just wanted to touch upon a couple of other things. Other than impact, value is probably another word that I use with equal frequency to impact. And I want to use the word value in 3 different ways. The first one is, when you're going through these questions, it really makes you reflect upon what are your values? What's really important to you? What do you believe in? This is so important because the work that you're doing, for it to connect with you, for you to feel satisfied in what you're doing, you're going to have to share the values with your clients, or your clients are going to have to share values with you. The firm you work with is going to have to share. If you're working for people who are, not honest, don't have integrity, is it really a place that you want to be? It may sound kind of silly and obvious, but this is a very important point. So you want to make sure you understand your own values so that you can gravitate towards people who share those values, because only great things will come from that. The second use of the word value that I want to focus on is defining and quantifying your individual value prop, which I talk about a lot. Again, I sort of touched upon this in the beginning of the session, where most of us are not raised to say, oh, my value is this. I'm really great at this. It's kind of like, how do we fit into someone else's box? If you do that throughout your career, you're never going to be happy. You're never going to find what you want. You're never going to be paid what you're worth. So it is very, very important at every stage of the game to focus on the value you bring to the table. And as an example, someone who's young, again, like I said, you may not have 10, 15 years of experience, but if you have a unique viewpoint or perspective, or you have this insane work ethic, anything you can do that's going to make your employer money is your value. And it's not just experience. It's not just the hours you put in. It's your whole self that you bring to work. Nobody else is going to quantify that for you but you. So when we talk about fairness in pay, when you go to negotiate a salary or a bonus or anything, you need to know exactly, as close as you can get, to what you, understanding what you bring to your firm, what you bring to the table, to understand if your compensation is fair or not. The third use of the word value is ensuring that you are valued. So this is where the self-advocacy comes in, right? So again, back to quantifying your value. As you progress in your careers, and it's hard when you first start out, so this is something to think about in the future. But when you look at what you're bringing to the table, so if you look at the level of work you're doing, the quality of work, if you look at the camaraderie you've built within the firm, if you're taking on leadership roles within a firm, if you're starting to do business development or brand development for the firm, anything that you're doing that you bring to the table that is helping to make the partners, the firm, the organization money or generate revenue is your value, right? So you need to figure out, and this is hard to do on your own, so you may need to get someone's help on this, but you need to figure out more or less what that's worth and make sure that you're always being paid for that, okay? And making sure that you're valued. So you and also keeping kind of what I like to call an impact diary. Here's another idea. Whereas you come up, you say, I want to grow in the firm. Let's just say, I want to have this kind of, I want to work with these kinds of clients, or I have this idea for a project. Then you make a note of, okay, here's my idea. Here's who I need to work with to get it done. Here's the timeline. Here's what's going into it. Here's what I've done. Here's what Joe's done. Here's what Sally's done. Did it work? If so, why? Did it not work? If so, why not? Or if not, why not? That way you can track where your time is best spent, because you're going to notice that you might start a project that nobody supports within your firm or organization. And you're putting tons of hours and tons of time into it, and you're running up against brick walls. Well, you're going to learn pretty quickly, you know what? Maybe I should turn in the other direction. You have to keep track of your time because it's very, very valuable. And I'm not talking about billable hours.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I did as a young associate was, I talked to a lot of the other associates, the ones who were more senior to me, to just ask them, what are the things that people have valued in your performance reviews? What do they like? What sort of behaviors do they like? What sort of, things did they want you to be doing? Because I think every firm's a little bit different as to how much they want their junior associates doing business development. Some firms don't want them doing it at all. They just want you learning how to do the work, and that's it. And they don't want you out there talking to potential clients.
Which, by the way, is music to many lawyers' ears. They don't want to be out there doing it anyway.
Right. But I think it's a very important point to say, like, hey, don't assume what you think your firm wants from you. You have to talk to people at the firm who've been there longer than you. In any organization, right? Not just law firms, but if you're working at, for a government, or if you're working for a court, you always have to find out, what is the yardstick that you're being measured by, and what is the yardstick that they determine value from. And are you aligning with that yardstick or not? Because you could be spending all your efforts on the wrong thing, right?
That's right. And I think that's a great point. And I think back to what I said earlier about sitting down one-on-one with the person who's your direct supervisor that you work closely with, who's senior to you, asking them what their expectations are of you. It's interesting. Lawyers, you guys communicate for a living, yet you'll find as you progress in your career that the communication within firms and organizations oftentimes suffers. It's not so great. So you need to take it upon yourself and foster an environment that is where there's lots of two-way communication going on. So you need to sit down and ask, hey, I really want to do well in my job. So it's very important for me to understand very clearly what your expectations are of me. And it forces them to quantify it. It forces them to say, I want you to do this, this, and this. That way, when you come back and you have exceeded their expectations, well, then that's a different discussion to have. And that's a really good discussion to have.
How do you gauge, when is a good time to approach your, supervisor about this stuff? Should it be the first couple months that you start, or should it be your yearly performance review, or how often should you be engaging in that?
I'm a believer of, there's no time like the present. So I feel like when you start a job, and if, like I said earlier, if your manager's not, or some supervisor's not someone who's going to come to you and ask these questions, then I think that as soon as possible, you have a chance to go grab a coffee, go grab lunch, what have you, and say, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to learn and to do the best work possible. And to do that, I really want to know what your expectations are of me and how I can help you. And a specific example of this is a complaint that I hear a lot from senior partners about younger associates is that there's not as much detail to pay attention to detail as they would like. So if the work has to constantly come to them to be corrected, and they're not following directions, and it costs them a lot of time and money, not a good thing. So it's a matter of, I think, and each partner has different expectations. So I think that you need to, the person you're working most with, you need to go to them and say, how do you work? What's your style? How do you interact with clients? Where do you see me? Do you want me to just sort of sit in my office and be quiet, or do you want me to work with clients? Because everyone's different. That way you'll know exactly where they are. And in the beginning, of course, they're not going to necessarily trust you because they don't know you. and you're inexperienced. So you have to constantly prove yourself, and that's a good thing. But make sure that they're defining it for you, because otherwise, like you said, you can't assume and you can't guess, because you'll always be walking on eggshells and you'll always be very nervous.
Awesome.
Does anybody have any questions for me or comments?
Yeah, all of you guys feel free. We'll just open it up for Q&A. Feel free to unmute yourselves, interact. Absolutely, this is y'all's time. So jump in.
Yes, I have a question, Wendy. So it seems like what you're saying is, especially the part regarding branding yourself, advocating for your skills, that I was talking to a bunch of entrepreneurs and from the business world, and going on LinkedIn, I connected with many lawyers. It seemed like everyone is doing a side business, a side hustle. I see people doing podcasts, people saying they're selling this. So how important, what you're saying is, it seems like we have to think like entrepreneurs for our own selves. We're trying to sell ourselves to everyone. Yeah. So how important is that? And is it important today in today's era for lawyers to have supplemental income, to have something on the side to because law school costs an enormous amount of money, and many lawyers take a long time to pay off student loans. So how important is that advocacy for yourself, not only for your career as a lawyer, but also for the side business or something? Yeah.
So just to be clear, thank you for the question. Just to be clear, a lot of these things that you're referring to as side hustles are actually non-income producing. So podcasts, things on LinkedIn, most people are doing this for reasons other than, it's an indirect stream of income. In other words, if you put yourself out there and you're advertising and people hire you. I think that to be successful in really almost any job, particularly in professional services, you have to think like an entrepreneur. You have to think like a leader, which is very challenging for lawyers because they don't teach you that in law school. So I think that the only concern I have by having what you call a side hustle, let's say you're focusing, your day job is associate by day and by night you're a DJ or whatever it is. What I would welcome you to think about is, if you're doing something else just to bring in income, that's fine. But let's have fun with this. Why don't you look at the common thread between the two things? Because there's always a common thread. And see if you can make something of that, because that is going to be your unique personal brand. Does that make sense? What I would recommend is any opportunity you can get your hands on where you're going to learn business skills and leadership skills. And I happen to know from personal experience, because I was in the insurance business for almost 20 years and I was always in sales and business development. So I happen to know a lot about that world. And what I got out of it, because when I got out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do and I didn't have any business skills. And the reason I went into that was because sales was the best way for me to gain that business experience. And it was very, very valuable. So I think that I agree with you. I think that as whether you're, waiting to get into law school or you're thinking about a career, whatever it is, anything that you all can get your hands on to learn about business and leadership, whether it be an actual job, even a little internship, read, take a course, super, super, super valuable, because you will use those skills at some point. And think about it, if you're eventually going to be a business attorney, for example, don't you think your clients, you'll have more credibility if you can actually speak their language, business owners' language, and understand?
Yeah. If I could just speak up as well, Wendy, such great points. Lisa Goldcool, I'm a legislative counsel attorney in California and a supervisor as well. And I think Wendy is spot on with, for me, the side things I do, because I do writing. So I do writing groups, LinkedIn postings, things that contribute to my writing ability. But I think one of the big things, as Adser mentioned, that's missing is the ability to sell, or as Wendy said, the ability in business or leadership. So what I find is seeing people going from being attorneys to supervisors or into leadership positions is they are woefully deficient. You have so much legal experience, you get 3 years of training, and then you have internships, and then you have maybe 10 years of experience, and then you become a supervisor and you have a 2-week training course. So you have 80 hours of training and you jump in And so you have a lot of really, really poor either business owners, and it's the same thing with if you open your own practice, you need all those skills, the ability to market and even the selling, I think. And this is why sales to me is important. Everything is selling. So even if I'm telling my client, here's why this is the better answer, this is why the better course of action, I need to be able to persuade that client and speak the language that works for them to take the optimal approach. So as much as I know sometimes lawyers will denigrate sales ability or business ability, or it's a little bit like bourgeois, those are really, really important for your clients ultimately. If you want to be expeditious with your clients' money where you're not wasting it, and you're understanding their needs, and if you want to be able to convince them to make the right decisions, you 100% need both sales and business. So I couldn't agree more with Wendy, having seen the downside. So
it's such a great point, Lisa. Thank you. And I think you kind of made me think about something. I mean, everything is sales. And when you're interviewing for a job, whatever the job happens to be, I mean, even if you're interviewing for a position at Home Depot, you have to convince the person who's looking to hire you that you are going to make them more money than they pay you. And remember, it's not just salary, it's benefits, it's taxes, it's everything. If you're just going to help them break even, why should they hire you, right? So I think if any of you have any opportunity to get some sales experience, and it could be working in retail or working as a server in a restaurant, that's huge, or a bartender, that's huge. You learn a lot about people and relationships, you gain confidence, and you are selling. I think it's very valuable experience and will only make you a better lawyer.
yeah, absolutely. And I sometimes call it for people also bedside manner, because as an attorney, you have to deliver a lot of bad news. And how you do it, it's like if you've had a great doctor to tell you you have a bad condition versus that doctor who's like, guess what, you have cancer, versus the doctor who really understands. Bedside manner is half of successful lawyering, I think.
Amen. Amen. Any other questions? Yeah.
Can I do a follow-up, Wendy? So how long did you how long did you do sales before you transitioned to becoming a lawyer? Because I think that's what I'm gonna do. Like, how many years did you?
Okay. So I'm not a lawyer. I just work with them every single day, and I know their lives and challenges pretty intimately. My background is I was in sales and business development for most of my career, so 20 some years. I still am, because I'm a consultant and I have to sell myself. So I will tell you, but when I first got into sales, I knew nothing about it. I mean, I was shy and I thought the same thing as anyone else, like selling is cheesy. It's some cheesy used car sales guy. But I learned so much. And the best part about it was that I was very solutions oriented. And because I positioned myself as an advisor to my clients as opposed to a salesperson, and I paid attention to what their individual unique needs were as business owners, oh my gosh, I have a street MBA because of it. I learned so much, which has allowed me to help so many people through my current company.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I have street envy of great business people. Being in civil service, I'm very in awe of that. I was speaking with a guy from my office, and I was trying to explain the show Pawn Stars to him. He said, oh, I've seen that, and I think they rip the people off because they only pay them half the amount of the item that they can sell it for. And I was like, yeah, but they have to store the item. They're also paying all their staff. They may not sell the item. There's an uncertainty. I'm like, you have to factor this all in. And he just said, well, I just think it's unfair. And I was like, well, this is the problem. You know, a lot of lawyers don't understand business and sort of that common sense practicality. So if you see a great business person, you could plop them in almost any field and they're going to do pretty well, honestly.
I think also I want to touch upon mentorship, which I know, Angie, is something that's very near and dear to your heart. I'm a huge fan of mentoring, and I'm often asked, I think everybody should have a mentor. I unfortunately did not benefit from having a mentor. I had to kind of come up on my own and figure stuff out. So if you have the opportunity to get a mentor or be a mentor, do it. So I'm often asked, how do you find a mentor? You know, and it should be some sort of formal arrangement or agreement with someone. It could be one time a year, it could be every month, could be every day. It just depends. But what I'm getting at is I would actually seek out a mentor outside of your current organization or your current circle, let's say. So ads are like, you're kind of in limbo right now, right? You're not in school. So I would do everything you can to befriend people in the business world, to seek out, connect with people on LinkedIn, find someone who's generous with their time, and talk to them and interview them and say, I'm a student of life right now. You know, I want to gain so many skills and be a sponge. What advice do you have for me? You will learn so much and you will develop great relationships. So I would strongly urge all of you to do that. I think you should also connect with lawyers, absolutely, but also try to bridge, you know, to try to break out of your comfort zone, so to speak, and find people in different professions.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm so glad that you said that. You know, absolutely. I think it's important for people to have lots of different mentors. I mean, just realize that, you know, not every mentor is going to be the person that you click with immediately and that, you know, mentors you for life, right? Some mentors are meant to be in our lives for very short amounts of time. You know, like for AdSir, maybe just, you know, you'll find somebody who can lead you through this time that you're going through until you get into law school. But you should be seeking out many different mentors in your life. It shouldn't just be one attorney that you're talking to or two attorneys. You know, you should get the perspectives of lots of different professionals, not just attorneys, but, you know, talk to people at all levels of the organization. You know, one of my really good friends was a paralegal before I went into law school. And she would always tell me, like, the down and dirty stuff that no one would tell me, because she was like, you know, I see all these things. I'm at the lower levels and I see all the things happening. And so, you know, they're more likely to be candid and frank with you, and, you know, and find people outside of your organization. If you're assigned a mentor through your work or something like that, that's good, but you should also go seek out your own mentors, because there can be times when, if somebody's in your organization and they're mentoring you, when your organization's goals may diverge from your own, and it may be difficult for your mentor to advise you when, you know, what's good for the business isn't necessarily what's good for you. So find people who are not inside your organization, who will, you know, ask the tough questions, who will help you navigate those things, and they don't have any skin in the game, because that's super, super important that you have support for when you get stuck in those situations, when it is really tough, when what's good for you diverges from what's good from the firm. You'll feel it, because everything about that situation is not going to be fun. So you need to have somebody on the outside who can help you navigate that going forward, or you're just going to feel really, really lost. So.
Totally agree. And I think also when you touched upon, if you're doing something that if your values or what you want is not aligned with the firm's, you'll feel it. Let's call it intuition, guys. Do not ignore your gut, ever. I learned that lesson way too late. And intuition is a very, very powerful thing, especially as you're trying to navigate your career. It could even be that you start law school and you get halfway through and you say, this isn't for me. Don't be afraid to say that to yourself. Don't be afraid to be willing to make a change if it makes sense before you get, let's say, deeper in debt. Don't just stick with something because you made a commitment because of what you thought you wanted. Think it through, get advice, but don't become a prisoner to what you thought you wanted before you discovered kind of the path you should be on, if that makes sense.
Completely. You know, all of my preconceived notions about what the practice of law was going to be like, once I got into law school, I realized, like, oh my goodness, this is way different than what I thought it would be. I completely agree. Even if you thought all your life you wanted to be a family law lawyer, but then, like, when you're in law school, you discover all these other paths that you might want to take. You know, you're interested in business law, you're interested in tax law, or whatever it may be. You know, open yourself up to that. And if you start hearing, you know, that dissonance in your heart when you're in law school, pay attention to it, because it's way better that you discover it early than, you know, one day when you're swamped in work and you're 10 years in and you're miserable and you're crying at your desk because you don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's way better for you to hear that early on and course correct. It's always easier to course correct early on than it is later down the line. So, yeah.
Indeed.
Awesome. Did we have any other questions?
If I can just make a comment real quick.
Yeah.
So I actually spent 4 years in a PhD program in psychology and had what you're talking about, the dissonance, before deciding to change. And so now I'm starting law school in the fall. But I found it so incredibly helpful to schedule meetups before the coronavirus. Now they're virtual, with attorneys from all different areas, from people, as you've been talking about, in different fields and different areas. And having that opinion from each person is different. But I just found that to be incredibly helpful. So for anyone who's shy, don't be afraid. So many people are more likely to say yes than no.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Saloni, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Speak up.
Yeah. Hi, Wendy. Thank you so much for providing such excellent guidance for us. I know there's probably a lot of people that are pre-law here. I actually just recently graduated from law school, and I'm actually on the job search right now. So, Wendy, I was wondering if you might have any advice for people like me who are trying to learn how to advocate for ourselves in a job search climate like this one, where it's so, jobs are few and far between, and it's also hard to kind of connect with people. Even though I've been finding that Zoom is making it a lot easier to connect with people online. But yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's any way I could advocate for myself right now during the job search.
I think networking, congratulations, by the way. I think networking, to me, networking is the most important skill anybody can ever develop. And when I say networking, I'm not just talking about, just shaking a lot of hands and kissing a lot of babies. It's really about connecting with people and finding ways that you can be of value to them, right? And also learning. So I think that there's an opportunity, and because I posed this question to a couple of senior attorneys that I really respect, because there's a lot of people like you right now. And what they said was that there's so many opportunities for young, recent grads to find creative ways to provide value to firms. It could just be, let me volunteer a little bit to do some research for you. Let me, is there anything that you need done, or any way I can help your firm? You may not have the budget right now, per se, but if there's anything I can do so I can learn as well, huge. It opens up a really great conversation. It's kind of like the old concept of an informational interview. When you go and you talk to someone and you say, I know you don't have a job right now, but let's just connect. You're always the first person they're going to call when something opens up. So I think you need to get in front of as many people as possible. Do you know the area you want to go into?
Yeah, I'm looking to practice IP in California.
Okay. So you need to just connect with as many people as possible in that field. I would also recommend that you connect with in-house folks that work for tech companies, because I'm sure they would have great ideas for you. And who knows, maybe they have an opportunity for like a part-time position to help them on the tech side company, which would be great for you. So I think you just need to kind of use LinkedIn, use the heck out of LinkedIn. It is so valuable. Do lots of research, find lots of people, connect to them, and then invite them to a virtual coffee, or virtual cocktail through Zoom, and talk to them and say, here's the situation I'm in. I'm very interested in this field. I have a lot to learn, but I have a lot to give as well. I'm sure you're probably in a hiring freeze right now, but please let me know if there's something I can do, even on an unpaid basis, where I can help you, provide value, and also learn. And I think you'll be very surprised, pleasantly surprised by the responses. And when things open up, you're going to be one of the first hired.
Thank you.
That was a beautiful approach. I think right now people are looking for different types of ways to satisfy their business needs. They might not be hiring for traditional first-year associate roles because that doesn't make sense for their business right now. But they may be looking for some really creative ways to at least deal with some backlog. You know, there are some firms that are just underwater right now, especially like commercial litigation firms. A lot of them are underwater right now, but they also don't have time to go out and hire a first-year associate, train them, put them through, you know, all the normal training programs that they would go to. So maybe it's talking to them and asking, you know, can I just take on a couple of contract projects that, you know, can help you deal with your workload right now? Whatever it is, at least just to get your feet wet and get your foot in the door, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's really, by the way, it's not just in the legal space. I mean, it's anywhere. So I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier about business experience. You know, if you're interested in a particular area, you're not really sure where you want to be in terms of practicing law, but you're interested in a particular sector or profession. Like, you know, call those companies and say, I'm here, put me to work. I want to provide value in some way. I happen to have a law degree, but I also have all these other skills too. Anything you can do to build a well-rounded resume is a great idea. I'm here to help anybody. If you have questions after this, you want to have a one-on-one conversation, please connect on LinkedIn or shoot me a message. I'm happy to help you, happy to answer anything that you guys have on your mind.
All right, well, I guess we'll go ahead and end early. If you guys need anything at all, feel free to reach out to both of us. And I hope you all have a wonderful, safe, and happy and healthy week. We have another meetup coming up on Thursday about imposter syndrome and how to overcome it. I think it's a really good complement to this meetup because I think it talks a lot about those feelings of insecurity that we all feel during our early careers. And ways to kind of overcome those that fear of failure and that fear of, you know, I don't belong here. And we also have a virtual happy hour coming up on Friday. So we do these every other week where you can actually connect with one person one-on-one. So we'll spend 30 minutes going through introductions with the whole group, and then you'll be split into breakout rooms where you just meet with one other person. So you get to actually make a real connection, and then you come back into the main room to get to know everybody. So yes, join us for both of those events, and I hope to see you there. And thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Angie. This was great.
All right. Bye.